Our planet is graced with approximately 165 million rivers. Most are simply streams of water flowing from one point to another, sustaining our cities, irrigating our fields, and ultimately merging with the seas. We are accustomed to rivers. We swim in them, fish in them, build bridges and dams across them. They appear familiar, manageable, and safe. Yet, among these vast numbers, there exist rivers that defy all logic. Rivers that boil, rivers carrying acid instead of water, rivers that flow underground, beneath the waves, or even in reverse. Rivers capable of annihilating life within yards of their banks. This is not fiction, it is reality. These are genuine bodies of water, charted with coordinates you could input into a navigator, though I wouldn't advise visiting all of them. Let us begin with a river that sounds like a plot from a B-grade horror movie, the boiling river of the Amazon. Shanai Timpishka, in the language of the local Ashanti tribe, translates to heated by the sun's warmth. However, the sun plays no role here. This river, hidden deep within the Peruvian Amazon, maintains a water temperature between 70 and 100 degrees Celsius for over 6 kilometers. It literally boils, steam rising from its surface. The rocks at its bottom are coated in thermophilic bacteria, and any creature unfortunate enough to fall in perishes within seconds. Local inhabitants recount how small animals like squirrels, lizards, and snakes occasionally fall into the water. Their eyes are the first to succumb, their pupils contracting, rendering the creature blind before it can comprehend its fate. Next, the skin, then the muscles. Within moments, the animal is reduced to a formless mass, swept away by the current. To bathe in Shanai Timpishka is to be boiled alive. Legends of this river have circulated for centuries, but scientists dismissed them. A boiling river in the jungle, far from any volcanoes, seemed impossible. Hot springs are associated with volcanic activity, and the nearest volcano to Shanai Timpishka is 700 kilometers away. It simply couldn't be. But in 2011, a young Peruvian geophysicist named Andres Ruzo, who grew up hearing his grandfather's tales of this river, decided to investigate the legend himself. He ventured into the jungle and found it. The river was real. It was boiling, and it had absolutely no connection to volcanoes. Ruzo dedicated years to studying this phenomenon, arriving at a conclusion that surprised even him. The water in Shanai Timpishka originates from rain. Ordinary rainfall, falling hundreds of kilometers from the river in the Andes, seeps deep into the Earth's crust, reaching depths of several kilometers. There, geothermal heat elevates its temperature to extreme levels. This superheated water then rises back to the surface through a system of geological faults, emerging as a river. In essence, Shanai Timpishka is a colossal natural kettle. Cold water descends, is heated deep within the earth, and returns boiling. This process takes years. The water boiling in the river today may have fallen as rain several decades ago. For the indigenous tribes, the boiling river is a sacred site. Shamans utilize its steam for ritual ceremonies, and its waters for preparing medicinal concoctions. They believe the river possesses supernatural power, and that a colossal serpent spirit resides in its depths. Ruzo, despite his scientific skepticism, admits that standing on the bank of the steam-shrouded river, listening to the roar of the boiling water, it's difficult not to feel something otherworldly. It is a place where science and mythology intersect, the boundary dissolving in the hot mist. Ruzo installed a network of temperature sensors along the river, discovering that the water temperature fluctuates with the seasons and rainfall. During the dry season, it peaks at around 100 degrees Celsius in the central sections. In the rainy season, cooler rainwater partially dilutes the boiling water, bringing the temperature down to 60 to 70 degrees. However, even in cooler periods, the water is hot enough to cause third-degree burns in mere seconds. Locals are aware of safe zones, small tributaries where hot and cold waters mingle, creating natural pools around 40 degrees Celsius. Here they bathe, wash clothes, and cook food, literally boiling meals in the river. But a step aside, and the water is once again boiling. For global science, Shanai Timpishka was a revelation, challenging existing models of geothermal activity. It was believed that hot springs of such magnitude were impossible without a nearby volcano. It turns out that a deep geological fault and sufficient rainfall are all that's needed for rainwater to penetrate to depths where rock temperatures exceed 200 degrees, heat up, and resurface. This implies that similar boiling rivers could theoretically exist anywhere on the planet with deep faults and adequate precipitation. How many more such rivers lie hidden in the impenetrable Amazon jungle, the mountains of Central Africa, or the remote reaches of Borneo? We simply do not know. But while Chennai Timpishka kills with heat, the next river kills in an entirely different manner. The Rio Tinto, the Red River, flows in southwestern Spain, in the province of Huelva, and it looks as if someone has spilled several tons of paint across the landscape. Its waters are a deep crimson, sometimes orange, and its banks are encrusted with mineral deposits shimmering with hues of yellow, purple, and black. It is one of the most alien sights on Earth, and one of the most toxic. The water of the Rio Tinto has an acidity level of pH 2, comparable to stomach acid. It dissolves heavy metals, iron, copper, zinc, arsenic, and cadmium. No fish, no frogs, no freshwater crayfish can survive in this water. The river is dead, at least by conventional standards. The red color is a result of high concentrations of dissolved iron, oxidized by the acid. But where does the acid come from? The answer lies underground. The Huelva region is rich in deposits of sulfide ores, minerals containing sulfur and metals. When these ores come into contact with water and oxygen, a chemical reaction occurs, producing sulfuric acid. This process, known as acid mine drainage, happens naturally, but is significantly amplified by mining. Humans have been extracting ore in this area for 5,000 years, since the time of the Phoenicians and Romans. Each successive generation of miners exposed new layers of sulfide rock, accelerating the chemical reaction. The Rio Tinto is a river that humanity, unknowingly, has killed over 5 millennia. Yet, here's the astonishing part. Life does exist in this seemingly lifeless river. Not fish or frogs, but microorganisms, extremophile bacteria and algae that not only survive in the acidic environment, but thrive in it. They feed on dissolved metals, use sulfuric acid as an energy source, and carpet the riverbed in dense mats of red, green, and purple. For NASA scientists, the Rio Tinto is the closest terrestrial analog to the conditions presumed to exist on Mars. The red planet is covered in iron oxides, hence its color, and beneath its surface there may be acidic groundwater saturated with metals. If life exists on Mars, it might resemble the bacteria found in the Rio Tinto. NASA has been funding research on this river for over 20 years, using it as a testbed for instruments intended to search for life on other planets. The story of the Rio Tinto is also a tale of human avarice. This site has been exploited continuously for 5,000 years. The Phoenicians extracted silver, the Romans copper and gold. In the 19th century, British and German companies transformed the region into a colossal quarry, extracting millions of tons of ore. Even the name Rio Tinto has become a brand. One of the world's largest mining corporations bears the river's name. The irony is that a company named after a dead river continues to extract resources globally, creating new dead rivers on other continents. The Rio Tinto is not just a peculiar river, it is a mirror reflecting 5,000 years of humanity's relationship with nature. We take, and take, leaving behind acid and rust. The third river, perhaps the strangest of all, flows not on land but underwater. Yes, you heard correctly, an underwater river. In 2010, a team of British scientists discovered a fully formed river on the floor of the Black Sea, complete with a channel, banks, a floodplain, and even waterfalls. It flows along the seabed at a depth of approximately 35 meters, with a width of up to 1 kilometer and a depth of up to 35 meters. If it flowed on land, it would be the 6th most voluminous river in Europe, larger than the Rhine. How is this possible? The secret lies in density differences. The water in this underwater river is significantly saltier and therefore denser than the surrounding seawater. It originates from the Mediterranean Sea, flowing through the Bosphorus Strait. The Mediterranean water, being saltier and denser, penetrates into the Black Sea and descends to the bottom, where it follows a pre-existing channel, much like a river on land. The density difference between the river water and the sea water is sufficient to form distinct banks, currents, and even turbulent eddies, precisely like a regular river. Only all of this occurs underwater. Divers who have explored the underwater river describe a remarkably realistic sensation. You swim in the water, descend lower, and suddenly perceive the surface of another body of water, darker and murkier, with a clearly discernible current. If you dip your hand into this lower water, you can feel the current pulling it sideways. A river within a river, water within water. Underwater rivers are not unique phenomena. They have been discovered in several locations globally, including the floor of the Gulf of Mexico, off the coast of Australia, and in the Caribbean Sea. However, the Black Sea River is the largest known and the best studied. It plays a critical role in the Black Sea ecosystem, transporting nutrients and oxygen along the seabed and forming unique benthic communities, organisms living at the interface of two water bodies. For geologists, underwater rivers are key to understanding how submarine canyons and sedimentary basins are formed. It turns out that the seabed is sculpted by the same processes as land, by flowing water. It simply flows beneath other water. The Black Sea underwater river was discovered using a new generation of sonar capable of distinguishing water layers of different densities. When scientists first viewed the data on their screens, they couldn't believe their eyes. The monitor clearly revealed a channel with sinuous banks, floodplains, and even something akin to oxbow lakes cut off from the main flow. The underwater river behaves exactly like a surface river. It meanders, erodes its banks, transports sediment, and forms a delta where it meets the abyssal plain. If there were trees on the Black Sea floor, it would undermine them. If there were bridges, it would erode them too. Water remains water, whether it flows over land or across the seabed, and it obeys the same physical laws. It simply took us several thousand years to discover this. The fourth river is located in Africa, and it is lethal. Not because of its temperature or acidity, but because of what it dissolves. Lake Natron in Tanzania. Formerly a lake, water flows into it via rivers that are themselves among the strangest waterways on Earth. It contains such a high concentration of alkali that animals entering its waters are literally turned to stone. Not instantly, but rapidly enough for the result to resemble a scene from a horror film. The alkalinity of the water in natron reaches pH 10.5 to 12, comparable to an ammonia solution. The water temperature in some areas reaches 60 degrees Celsius. From the surrounding volcanic rocks, natron, the mineral that gave the lake its name, sodium carbonate, leaches out. This is the same substance the ancient Egyptians used for mummification, and it does something similar to animals that fall into the lake as it did to pharaohs. It calcifies and preserves them. Photographer Nick Brandt, working on the shores of Natron, found dozens of perfectly preserved bodies of birds and bats. They appeared as sculptures, frozen in natural poses, coated in a white mineral deposit. Some birds sat on branches with wings outstretched, others were captured in mid-flight. A third was caught in the act of trying to lift off from the water's surface, which was already killing it. The mechanism of death is cruelly simple. Birds, especially migrating flocks, mistake the shimmering surface of the lake for a normal body of water and land on it. The alkali corrodes their skin and feathers, the natron permeates their tissues, and within hours or days, the body calcifies. Wind and waves deposit the mummified bodies on the shore, where they can remain for years, even decades, as macabre natural monuments. This is not a legend or an exaggeration. Brandt's photographs have circled the globe, becoming some of the most shocking natural images of the 21st century. Yet, this is also a paradox worthy of nature itself. Lake Natron, which kills almost all living things, is the sole breeding ground for the lesser flamingo in East Africa. Approximately 2.5 million of these birds nest on salt islands in the middle of the lake. The alkaline water, which kills predators, provides ideal protection for the flamingos. No terrestrial predator can reach their nests because the water burns their paws. Flamingos are among the few creatures capable of withstanding such an environment. Their legs are covered in tough scales, and specialized glands filter out salt and alkali. The Lake of Death is simultaneously a birthing ground for millions of birds. Nature, as always, plays its own game. But natron is not only dangerous for animals. Humans who have attempted to cross the shallow waters of the lake on foot have suffered severe chemical burns on their feet. The alkaline water corrodes skin within minutes. The Maasai, who live on the lake's shores, know its character and maintain a respectful distance. They use natron, a mineral that can be collected from dried areas of the shore, for treating hides and as a food seasoning, but they do not enter the water. Pilots of small aircraft flying over natron describe it as one of Africa's most beautiful sights. The lake changes color from bright red to pink and orange, depending on algal concentration and water temperature. And the white islands of natron on its surface create patterns resembling abstract art. Beauty and death, nature's eternal partnership. Scientists are concerned about the lake's future. The Tanzanian government has, on several occasions, considered projects to build a sodium carbonate processing plant on the shores of natron. Environmentalists warn that industrial activity would disrupt the delicate balance and destroy East Africa's largest flamingo colony. For now, the projects are frozen, but the threat remains. Natron serves as a reminder that the most extreme, most inhospitable places on Earth are often also the most fragile. The fifth and final river is the strangest from a physics standpoint. It flows backward. The Chicago River, in the city of the same name in Illinois, is the only major river in the world whose flow has been artificially reversed by 180 degrees. Before 1900, the Chicago River flowed into Lake Michigan, a vast freshwater lake that served as the source of drinking water for the entire city. The problem was that all the city's waste, sewage, industrial byproducts, slaughterhouse waste, was discharged into this same river. Chicago was the world's largest meatpacking center. The result was predictable. The city's drinking water became so contaminated that typhoid and cholera epidemics claimed thousands of lives annually. In 1885, one such epidemic killed approximately 90,000 people, nearly 12% of the city's population. A radical solution was decided upon: reverse the river. Instead of purifying the water or building treatment plants, which technologies of the time did not allow, city engineers decided it was simpler to make the river flow in the opposite direction, away from the lake towards the Illinois River and then the Mississippi. Chicago's waste would no longer enter its drinking water. It would flow downstream towards St. Louis and other cities on the Mississippi. The problem was solved, at least for Chicago. The engineering project was monumental. To reverse the river, the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal was constructed, a 40-kilometer channel dug through the drainage divide between the Great Lakes and Mississippi basins. The work took 8 years. Thousands of laborers, hundreds of pieces of equipment, millions of cubic meters of excavated material. On January 21, 1900, the locks were opened, and the Chicago River began to flow backward. The water that had for millennia flowed east into Lake Michigan reversed course and flowed west into the Mississippi. It was perhaps the most audacious act of hydroengineering in history. Humans took a river and commanded it. You will flow there now. Neighboring cities, understandably, were not thrilled. St. Louis, located downstream on the Mississippi, sued, claiming Chicago was exporting its waste into their drinking water. The case reached the U.S. Supreme Court, which in 1906 sided with Chicago, ruling that a connection between Chicago's waste and illnesses in St. Louis had not been proven. It was a controversial decision, but it solidified the Chicago River's status as the only major river flowing the wrong way. Today, it still flows in reverse, and Chicagoans regard this fact with ironic pride. There's even a plaque on the riverfront that reads, "Here the river flows backward." But the consequences of the reversal are still felt, and not all of them are positive. The canal, connecting the Great Lakes Basin to the Mississippi, created a passage that did not exist before, and through this passage, invasive species began to spread from one basin to another. The main threat today is Asian carp, a large, voracious fish that is devastating the Mississippi ecosystem and steadily moving north towards the Great Lakes. If the carp reach the Great Lakes, and they are already close to Chicago, they will destroy a multi-billion-dollar fishing industry. To combat the carp, electric barriers have been installed in the canal, designed to stun the fish with an electric shock. It sounds like science fiction, but it is reality. An electric fence in the water, protecting an entire lake system from the consequences of a decision made 125 years ago. The reversal of the Chicago River is a stark demonstration that every human intervention in nature has unforeseen consequences for which subsequent generations must pay. The story of the Chicago River exemplifies how far people are willing to go to solve a problem they themselves created. Instead of ceasing to pollute the water, they reversed the river. Instead of building treatment plants, they exported their waste to their neighbors. It is a triumph of engineering and an ecological nightmare rolled into one, and perhaps the most human of all the strange rivers on the planet. Nature creates boiling rivers, acidic rivers, underwater rivers, and killer rivers. And humans take an ordinary river and make it flow in the opposite direction because it is more convenient for them. 5 rivers. 5 ways to shatter everything we know about water, life, and death. Chennai Timpishka, boiling in the Peruvian jungle, reminds us that Earth is a living, fiery, unpredictable machine, and we live on its thin, cooled crust. The Rio Tinto, red with iron and sulfuric acid, shows that life finds a way even where it seems impossible. The Black Sea's underwater river proves that even in the ocean, seemingly a homogeneous mass of water, there are rivers, banks, and currents invisible from the surface. Lake Natron turns animals into stone sculptures while simultaneously nurturing millions of flamingos. And the Chicago River, flowing backward, reminds us that humans can alter nature itself, but do not always consider the consequences. Water is the most common substance on the planet. We are composed of about 60% water. We drink it every day. We take it for granted. But take a closer look at what rivers do in the most extreme corners of the world, and you realize that water is not just H2O, it is an element capable of boiling and freezing, dissolving rocks and turning flesh to moo, flowing underwater and against its own current. Water is the strangest substance on Earth, and rivers are its most peculiar manifestations. We are accustomed to thinking we know our planet. We have photographed every square meter of its surface from orbit, descended to the bottom of the deepest ocean trenches, and visited both poles. Venture beyond the well-trodden paths and delve into the heart of the Amazon rainforest. Plunge to the depths of the Black Sea, or soar above the saline lakes of Tanzania, and our planet transforms into a landscape of the unknown, both terrifying and wondrous. Imagine a river that simmers with such intensity it cooks all life, or a torrent of acid where Martian microbes thrive, or an underwater river with its own distinct banks and current. Picture a lake that petrifies unsuspecting birds, or a river whose course was forcibly reversed, leaving its creators to contend with the ramifications through electrified barriers. Each of these extraordinary waterways serves as a potent reminder that water is far more than a simple quencher of thirst. It is a formidable force, capable of intense heat, dissolution, preservation, and flow, that defies the very laws of gravity and logic. This is the primal power that carved vast canyons, sculpted continents, fostered all living things, and possesses the ability to extinguish life in a mere 10 seconds. Show reverence for these rivers, especially those that boil,